Most of the people think of energy as a cost, something to minimize, something to optimize. But that way of thinking only works in a stable world because once the uncertainty enters the system, and energy stops being just a cost and starts becoming a question of control. So let's start with a simple fact. Roughly 20% of world oil supply moves through a single narrow passage, the Strait of Hormuz. This is not just statistic, it is a structural vulnerability because when disruption happens there, it doesn't simply raise prices, it sends shock waves through the entire global system. What this tells you is something very important. The oil system is inherently concentrated. It depends on geography, on transport routes, and on a small number of critical choke points, which means that control over energy in an oil-based system is also concentrated. Now, connect this to what we discussed earlier. China imports resources, transform them through manufacturing, and expose products and components at scale. But none of that works without energy because the supply chain do not run on capital alone. They run on power. And this is where the structure begins to shift. China's total electricity consumption has now exceeded 10 trillion kilowatt hours, approaching and in some cases exceeding the combined consumption of the United States and Europe. This is not just a scale, it is a signal. Because electricity is fundamentally different from oil. Oil is a fuel, it must be extracted, transported, and delivered across long distance before it can be used. Electricity, by contrast, is a system. It can be generated, distributed, and balanced within a network. And that difference changes the nature of dependency. In an oil-based system, most countries depend on external supply chains that they do not fully control. In an electricity-based system, the country can regularly build a domestic capacity through solar, wind, hydro, or nuclear, and integrate it into their own grid system, not through independency, but increasing controllability. And that distinction matters. And because once energy becomes a system rather than a commodity, control no longer comes primarily from owning resources. It comes from building and managing system. Now take this one step further. When energy is stable and predictable, the countries optimize for efficiency, cost reduction, global sourcing, just-in-time system. But when energy becomes uncertain, the priority shift. Efficiency becomes secondary, control becomes primary. And in a world where geopolitical risk, supply disruption, and system shocks are increasing, that shift is already happening. This is why energy transition is often misunderstood. This is not just about reducing carbon emission, it is about restructuring control. Now connect this back to supply chain. China is already deeply embedded in global production networks. If it can also strengthen control over energy system, it adds another layer of stability. not just internally, but across the entire system it participates in. Because supply chains depend on energy, and energy systems determine how stable those supply chain actually works. So here is a simple way to think about it. When energy is treated as a cost, the countries compete on price. Now, when energy becomes a risk, the countries compete on control. And when a country improves its ability to control energy system, it doesn't just compete more efficiently, it changes the structure of competition itself. That is the real meaning of energy transition. And once you understand that, the next question becomes inevitable. If energy systems are being rebuilt, then what are the new constraints? That is what we will explore in the next episode.